Hey, this is the April 17th, 2023 monthly meeting of the East Norwalk Neighborhood Association. I believe, I'm not seeing who's coming in, but we have, I know we have one other board member with us, I think is online, George Hensinger. My name is Diane Cece. I'm on the board. I'm the board president. Okay, so just going through the agenda quickly, we're going to come back to these because some of these items are just quick points and discussion, just some points of information for you. The charter revision public hearing is, as far as we know, still scheduled for this Wednesday, the 19th. You can find more information about that on the city website. They have been reviewing the Charter Revision Commission has been reviewing the document now for months. They even had a meeting, multi-hour meeting this Saturday where they were continuing to update and make recommendations. So it really is kind of a work in progress. We recommend at this point that if you're interested in the charter revision items, which really kind of dictate how government is managed within the city, that you hop on to the city website. They now have an icon link directly to the Charter Revision Committee, and you'll find that on the main page of the city website at norwalkct.gov. It's on one of the icons down at the bottom. If you click on that, you'll be able to see all the information that they've put together to date, and you can always go to the city's YouTube page and review all of their meetings, which are recorded and posted on YouTube. The other announcement we want to make is to remind everyone that our annual Community Shredding Day event is this Saturday. It'll be held again in the East Norwalk Library parking lot. Thank you to 3rd Taxing District and the library for allowing us to use that space again. It will be from 9 a.m. to 12 noon, and we invite everyone to come out and always having a couple extra hands of volunteers is a good thing. Come out and meet some of your fellow ENNA members, and also to come along and bring your own shredding documents. We're hoping for good weather. I've been keeping an eye on it, but I do want to remind everyone, and especially our volunteers, that this is a rain or shine event. So we'll have to hope for good weather there. For the folks who have volunteered, there'll be a quick email midweek. This is a reminder of the time. We'll do assignments when people arrive in terms of what folks will be doing, and hopefully we'll get a good turnout. And then also in line with that too, I think it's at 11 a.m. or maybe it's at 12. Our shredding day actually falls specifically on Earth Day this year. It's always around Earth Day and after Tax Day, but this year it's on Earth Day, and the city has a number of events going on around the city with a kickoff that starts at the 1st District Norwalk Green on East Avenue. And so folks can come in the morning, drop off while they're shredding, and then head over to the green and partake in some of the many activities that are planned there. Once again, I have to make this announcement at every meeting. ENNA desperately needs board members and volunteers for subcommittees. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, especially it's really kind of been nonstop, but there are some major things going on in the city that are coming up, and we really need a lot of people to volunteer. If you're not even sure what you may be able to help with, just shoot us an email. I'll reach out to you personally and talk about, what you might be interested in, what special talents you may have or expertise or what we need. And hopefully we can get some people to help out. But we do need people to sit on our board as well. And we're hoping that folks who subscribe to our mission statement about preserving and improving East Norwalk will step up to the plate there. Okay, so we have a bunch of people in the room here. I'm going to go ahead and move on. We'll come back to the agenda in a little bit. Tonight, we are lucky to have 2 guest speakers with different presentations, or multiple guest speakers. First up, we're going to have the folks who are representing the special permit for multifamily housing at 49 Van Zant Street. It's an application that's being filed under the East Avenue Village Transit Zone, or EVTZ. You may or may not realize that portions of Van Zant were designated as part of the EVTZ zone. And this was one of 3 areas that were outside of East Avenue proper that fall into the qualifications for special permits there. So we'll be having a presentation on that and a brief Q&A. And then that will be followed by a presentation by the folks from the Maritime Aquarium, the city's Conservation Department, and Norwalk River Watershed Association regarding an exciting grant that the aquarium was awarded to look at shoreline restoration at Veterans Memorial Park. And we want to hear about that, and also how ENNA can help with that effort. And then we'll have a brief Q&A after each one, and then come back and we can talk about some other ENNA business. And as always, we invite our guests to stay on after their presentations if they're interested in the other things we'll be talking about. I haven't been watching the room, but I believe that Attorney Liz Suchy is on, and we can, if you are, Liz, you can let us know who to make co-host for sharing a presentation, and also who you have with you from either the property owners or developers for the parcel.
Sure. Thank you, Diane. Can you hear me? Am I on?
Yep, you are on. And Liz, I'm so sorry I didn't get a chance to do any bios. So if you can just give us a brief intro to yourself and then who your guests are. So thank you so much.
That's fine, Diane. That's not a problem whatsoever. For everyone who, if you haven't met me, my name is Liz Suchy. I'm a partner at Carmody, Torrance, Sandak, and Hennessy. Our firm is located in Stamford, and I've been with that firm for approximately 15 years now. Prior to that, I was an associate at Tierney, Zullo, Flaherty, and Murphy, which is where I began practicing law way back when with Frank Zullo in 1993. So I've been practicing law in the area of planning and zoning for more than 30 years now. So I appreciate Diane's offer to have me and the property owner and our architect and civil engineer attend this evening to let you know what this project is all about, hear what your questions are, see if you have any suggestions that we may be able to consider and implement. And we're very happy that you are able to have us on this evening. I think tonight we'll be joined by Andy Sumalides of Land Tech, that's the civil engineering firm in Westport, by Phil Cerrone of Philip Cerrone Architects. He is the project architect. And I think a representative of the property owner, the property is owned by 49 Van Zant Street, LLC. Lefty should be on as well. So if you would let Andy and Phil be elevated to participant status, we can certainly make a quick presentation, screen share what has been provided to the Planning and Zoning Department, and answer questions that you may have. While that's going on, if you bear with me a second, I'll get some background info, and we're off to the races, as they say. We promise to be as brief as we can. We'll give you updates on where everything is today, and what the next steps are, and certainly happy to answer your questions. So the property that's the subject of this application, hopefully Andy can come on and screen share. Let's see. It's at 49 Van Zant Street. It's directly to the west of the library building. It's currently improved with a 2-family house that's been there probably since the early 1920s. I don't have the exact date. And what the proposal is to demolish that house, and in accordance with the new transit-oriented development zone for the East Avenue area, to create a new development with 13 apartments in that new dwelling. 13 units, there'd be 1 and 2 bedroom, rental, not condo, 17 parking spaces. And under the TOD requirements, we are suggesting several amenity components, which enable us to get an additional and some additional height on the building and bring us up to the number of units, the density that's proposed. The property is just over 1/4 acre in size. It's within the coastal zone. So in addition to the special permit application that was submitted, we also were required to submit a coastal area management short form application. Neighbors that abut or are located across the street were sent notice of the submission of the application beginning of February. And to date, we anticipate a public hearing on May 3rd. So far, all city departmental sign-offs have been secured, with the exception of transportation, mobility, and parking. And the reason for that is, despite having filed this in January, we only last Tuesday received comments from transportation, mobility, and parking. So we'll be working on those, but they were somewhat benign in nature. While Andy's getting ready, or you're able to screen share, the apartments will range in size if approvals are secured from about 830 square feet to about 1,200 square feet. There's recreation area, various East Avenue Village District amenities such as permeable pavers, electric charging stations, bike racks, pollinator gardens, and we may even provide public art on the side of the building. Would have to be reviewed by the Arts Commission. That's generally where we are. So there we go. We'll leave it to Andy at this point. If you have any questions of me, please feel free to ask them. I'm happy to answer them. And I can also provide to Diane. Diane already has my email address. If anyone has questions of me, certainly share them by email, and I'm happy to respond to them in kind. Andy?
Good evening. I'm Andy Sumalides. I am a principal and professional engineer with Landtech out of Westport. We are the surveyors and site civil engineers on the project. Right, what you see here is just an aerial view of the subject property. So here's 49 Van Zant. Here's Van Zant to the south, East Ave to the east, and the Mill Pond project that you guys are quite familiar with down here in the lower right of the Google Earth. What you see here is the site plan. In this maroon color is the outline of the building. The Van Zant here to the south, you would enter a driveway at grade and park below the structure. The front of the building has some commercial space, which will go in more detail. And then the 13 parking spaces with one handicap underneath the building. And quickly just run through, there's existing no stormwater on the site. And under proposed conditions, we're adding these rain gardens on either side that will pick up the entire roof. Which you'll see later. There's a good portion of it which is a green roof as well, which we actually don't take credit into our calculations. So that's just an added bonus. And then a couple of yard drains underneath the structure, which will get minimal water. As I said, this whole structure is covered. This whole parking area is covered, but the sides are open. So whatever little water does get underneath the structure will get picked up by these two catch basins. In the rear here is I think what Attorney Suchy mentioned earlier was the pollinator garden, which is one of those sustainable credits you get under this new zone. We also do expand the sidewalk here along the frontage, and then you have some minimal landscaping on either side. That in a nutshell is, the site plan. I think you'll see more in the architecture, and then we'll be happy to, answer any questions.
Thanks, Andy. For the record, I'm Philip Cerrone. My office is in Fairfield, Connecticut. I'm the architect for this project, and I will share my screen here. It's going to I'll do a quick walkthrough, and then we can answer any questions that you might have as far as the project goes. On this cover page here, it kind of gives you a list of the amenities and sustainability amenities that we have that we use to get our points for this project. And as Andy said, we have the wider sidewalk, and then we have a bunch of sustainability credits, including the green roof and pollinator garden, the rain garden. And we did do the calculations for eligibility for LEED Gold certification. And we did a HERS report also, which shows that we exceed the energy code, the current energy code. And then lastly, we did get credit for the rent reduction. So that's how we got the points that we needed for to get the 13 units. And as Liz said, there's 9 2-bedrooms and 4 1-bedroom units. On grade level, you'll drive in the driveway here, as Andy mentioned, with the parking on both sides of the property. There's a staircase here that leads directly to the second floor. It's really more of an egress stair. And then in the front of the building, we do have the commercial space that's required, and included in that is the 15-foot height, which gave us a little loft space above, which you'll see in a second. And then we have a separate entrance here for a little bit of an apartment lobby. And that also feeds a stair that goes up to the residential units above, as well as an elevator. The pump room is really just a sprinkler for the sprinkler pumps in the front of the building here, and an electrical room for some of our utilities back there. As you go up to the next level, the second floor, as I mentioned, we have a small loft in the commercial space with an interior stair that feeds that. So there's a little bit of additional space there, gives us a little bit of extra bonus commercial space. And then the two floor plans of residential are pretty much mirror images. As you can see, it's a combination of 1 and 2 bedroom units, the double loaded corridor down the middle, stair and elevator in the front, stair in the back over here. Again, this is the next floor up, is pretty much a mirror image of that. And then above that, we do have one of the apartments in the front here does gain a little bit of a loft space in that apartment also. And then we do have some outdoor amenity space here, which is fed off of the lobby. And then this basically becomes a green roof, which gives us some of our sustainability points. And then this is just mechanical space that's in the middle of it over here. On the exterior, this kind of gives you an idea of the different materials that we're using on the project. On the exterior, on the street facade, we do have a gable in the front here, which does have that little bit of loft space above it. And then on the first floor, the columns in the garage, the front of the building on the first floor will be also all brick. On the other 2 levels, it's a composition board with the composition trim. So it's basically, if you're familiar with the materials, it's either AZAC or Burrell or something like that. Siding would also be either a Burrell or a Hardy plank or something in that nature. So they're basically maintenance-free materials. The roof will be an asphalt shingle roof. We put some colors up on here just to kind of give you a sense of what we're thinking. So this is a vertical siding here. This will be a horizontal siding across here. Windows on the first floor be an aluminum framed typical storefront glass. Windows on the second and third levels will be more residential style windows, double hung windows with grills in the middle of them. And then to just kind of give you an idea of how we think it fits in with the neighborhood, this is a shot of it rendered into the neighborhood, basically. So this is the elevation of this is the library adjacent to it, which the library is set back from the street a distance. But the rest of these buildings, as you go up the street, are a little bit further closer to the street line. And as Andy said, we will be widening the sidewalk and of course redoing the sidewalks and everything along the street, the curb lines and all of that. And then we do currently have this wall here, which is we've dedicated for potentially some artwork. We're not taking credits for it as far as our bonus points, but this is a wall that was basically a solid wall because of the fact that that's where the elevator is and the stair towers and things like that. So that's kind of just a quick overview of the project. I'm happy to answer any questions.
So if anyone has any questions, we're happy to answer them. If you have any suggestions, certainly we anticipate going through the process with design review by the city's design review consultant, which is a firm known as DiCarlo and Dahl. And the principal at that firm is a gentleman named Robert Griswax, and he has started his design review of the proposed architecture, the structure, the materials. So that is something that is ongoing, and we will need to respond to his comments once we receive them.
Okay, so in terms of some dialogue here, just want to remind folks again, and thank you to Attorney Suchy and Mr. Similides and Mr. Cerrone for your time. You're certainly welcome to come back. I wasn't aware that the public hearing might be so soon, but I know that if you get questions into us, I know that Attorney Suchy is particularly responsive, so we're happy to continue the dialogue. If you do have questions, you can raise your hand, please, and we'll recognize you. Charles will call on you to unmute yourself. And then just a reminder too that your full presentation in more details, as with all special permit applications, is currently posted on the city website. And it's the same page that you would normally go to see a pending application. unrelated to this application, a little later on tonight, I'm going to show you again the path that you take in the city website to get to all of those, because it's a good page to go to for the actual details that, there was a lot of detail to get into, and we appreciate you, limiting the time just to give the overview. So, all right, Charles, I don't know if you can see the order of hands. I think
Yes.
Ms. Sorensen or
Okay, first up is Michelle.
Hi, thank you. Phil, I don't see your last name on the screen, so that would be nice to know who you are so I can look up some of your projects and see them. And
Yeah, my last name's on the drawings, but the last name is Cerrone, Cerrone.
thank you. My major reaction to this building, looking at it next to the library, is how blocky and large the front portion looks, and just doesn't have good scale in comparison to the library. And I just think it looks, that top story bigger than it needs to be.
I think that, part of the reason that I think that it looks that way is because it is much closer to the street, so it's a little bit more pronounced. We tried to minimize that as much as we could, but yet we have a relatively small site, and we're trying to get our units on there that we can fit on there. And we do have a requirement that in the front of the building that we have a 15-foot tall, which is practically a story and a half tall commercial space. So that kind of dictates a little bit of the facade part of the building, but we can work on that and see if we can.
Maybe you can do something with colors that would make it appear smaller, because light makes things look bigger,
Mhm.
And I was also concerned about the flat roof that you see on the west side of the building. And is that going to create future problems for the homeowners there in terms of possible leaking into their units on the third floor?
No, not at all. We'll get a roof, first of all, that'll have a 25-year warranty, but one of the reasons for the flat roof is we wanted to get the green roof, and can't really, as you would know, can't really do a green roof if we didn't do a flat roof. So that's one of the things that was driving the flat roof.
Okay, thank you very much. I will have other questions, but I'll direct them to Liz.
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you, Michelle.
Okay, next up we have Jim.
The obvious question, have they taken into account that right across the street is a firehouse station? Whether it's active or minimal active or not, it's right across the street. And I don't know if the architect could answer that. I don't know, maybe you are. Why is it so many units? And I think you even kind of said that, sticking 20 pounds of crap inside a 10-pound bag, basically. I'm not in favor of the way it looks. I think it is mimicking the form of the last speaker, boxy. It's not of character of the remaining buildings that's there and the houses that are there. What was my other question was, and then the flat roof with the garden, and this is a rental. Do you honestly think people that are renting are going to use the gardens? I just don't see the logic in that. I don't. I speak that as a property manager, which I own a company of. I don't see a lot of my rentals or people that are renting there for short term, year, less, more, using a garden. I feel I'm very bitter about the other property that we're going to speak about. I'm not going to talk about that, but it's an obvious lacking the terms of a snowball type of cover that the developers are trying to get used to building as many units as they can, coming up with credits that are just illogical and irrational and just doesn't make sense.
Jim, it's Diane. I can address a little bit of that too, and just to be fair to the applicants as well. You probably already know that you are coming in on the heels with a disadvantage of a very controversial application that was the first under the regulations that allow for bonus points. And I guess for the benefit of Jim and everyone else here, we do have to go back and say that that the zone itself is the zone. It was approved. It exists. And so compliance with and the combination of those bonus points is becomes no longer anything that's debatable. If the number of points adds up in any of the configurations, mostly related to sustainable, as we're seeing now in application number 2, then they're entitled to as many units as the bonus points allow. So I just want to remind folks about that we can continue to express our discouragement, but with an applicant who comes forward with a compliant permit request, there's really little that can be done on that. But I also do want to say, though, that when you say green roof, I don't think you're talking about one of the other options, which is what we called a community garden. So just to clarify that too, because I wasn't sure if Jim Anderson was referring to that versus green roof, meaning something that's going to retain water and be environmentally more friendly than a regular roof. If you can clarify that, then we'll go on to the next question.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, so there's a lot of comments there. We'll start with the green roof. It's not a garden. I'm sorry if I said it was a garden. It's not a garden. Not meant to be a garden. Not meant for people to walk on it. Not meant for people to go out and use it. There's a separate patio area for the people to use as an amenity space. It's a green roof it'll grow. It'll be sustainable. It'll be good for the environment, but it's not meant for people to use as a garden would be. The other point is that, look, we took the regulations that you guys wrote or somebody wrote, the city of Norwalk wrote, we took the regulations and we tried to work to those regulations. And so we just started with all the things you could get points for. And we looked at what would work for the best for this site, for us, for our client, and to get us the points that we needed to try to maximize the use of this property. So we worked within the regulations that we were given. We didn't go outside of that regulation at all. So with that said, needless to say, our clients want to try to maximize the benefit of the property, the benefit of the zone that it's in. So that's how we came up with the number of units that we came up with, which is the 13 units. And we actually got more points than we needed even to get the 13 units. So that's all. Basically, that's my response to your comments.
But
And by the way, as far as the firehouse across the street goes, I can't say we really took that into account. Did you mean from an architectural point of view or from a firefighting point of view? Or Jim, you're muted.
If I could just jump in at this
yeah,
point.
from a fire department and a traffic study point of view, also whatever traffic the adjourning car repair place that's right next door, two properties over.
We have a
that
traffic
generates
consultant.
some traffic too.
We have a traffic consultant that'll be doing a traffic report. We just haven't gotten that done yet.
Okay.
We have if I may jump in, we do have a traffic report that was submitted. And as I mentioned at the outset, city agencies have reviewed this in terms of safety, sightlines, location to other properties and buildings. And one of those agencies was the fire department, along with Department of Public Works, and the Transportation, Mobility and Parking Department did not raise any concerns or issues with the location of this structure across the street from the fire station. So that was not something that the city, at least to us, was noted as a concern. And as Phil has mentioned, we took the zone that was created by the city and used that zone and those parameters, those guidelines, conditions, and calculations to determine the size and shape and structure. And then that helped us determine the number of units that could be maximized on the property. We're not looking for variances. We're not looking to amend the East Avenue Village Transit-Oriented District. We're working within the parameters that the city approved by way of the new zone back, the end of last year, beginning of this year. That gave rise to Cemetery Street. So,
Thank you, Liz.
Very
I think we have
unfortunate.
time for a couple of more questions because we have about another 10 minutes. Because we wanted to get 2 different presentations in tonight. I would also say too, before we go on to the next one, Charles, that that in this case too, there were actually additional restrictions on this parcel versus Cemetery Street, because unlike that parcel, which was zoned specifically with removing the requirement for the 15-foot first story, these applicants have to comply with that. And that's why you see some of the layout, some of the design that they might not, I won't speak for you, Mr. Cerrone, but I would say perhaps they would have done a different design if they didn't have to comply with the 15-foot, but that's one of the things that may be driving that. Next,
Correct.
Okay, there are a lot of hands up, but we're going to go with Linnell next.
Hi, I just have two quick questions. One, I think I heard you say there was one handicap parking spot. Is that correct? And second, who at Deep reviewed this CAM application?
That is correct. There's one handicap spot for the 13 spaces. I'm sorry,
Code
17
only
spaces.
requires one for every
One-
25.
Yeah, correct. One for every 25 spaces is required. And it's a van accessible space, 8-foot hatched area and 8-foot space. In terms of the deep question, maybe Liz wants to answer that one.
Well, it's up to the city's staff to refer applications, CAM short form applications, to the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. But I would call your attention to the fact that this parcel is located significantly distant from any coastal resource. It's not adjacent to the mill pond, it's not adjacent to the harbor, and it's separated from any of the resources that are close by other developed properties, sidewalks, curbs, roads, structures. We believe that the CAM application is sufficient, stands on its own. It's been supplemented by a coastal report by Land Tech. But we do not refer the applications to Deep. That would be something that the city of Norwalk would have to do.
Let me just say that I know you're building to FEMA standards and that will keep the buildings up. But I believe that the Office of Long Island Sound Program, I believe CAM applications and Connecticut regulations are there to protect public health and safety. And I appreciate that you have one handicap parking space, but we saw 26 inches of rain last week in Florida. We've had flooding, and public health and safety is my concern here. Again, that's what these other regulations address. Maybe this is a plan to wash all the poor people out.
May I ask two questions? One, ma'am, what is your last name? So I know who you are. I just don't want to address you by your first name. That would be helpful. And Andy,
Linnell Jones.
thank you. And
We've
Andy,
spoken before.
yes, we have. And you're
Sure.
from Wolf Point. Yes, we have. Andy, would you be kind enough just to very briefly discuss FEMA compliance for this site? And
Sure.
thank you.
So none of the coastal resources are on or adjacent to this piece of parcel. We're actually out of the flood zone by quite a bit. So this structure doesn't even need to be to FEMA compliant. So there's no flood zone on this property, adjacent to this property. The closest flood zone is probably those properties along Mill Pond there. Or what's that pond there? I think it's that Mill Pond that you guys recently saw. So yeah, there's no CAM implications really, other than general development within 200 feet of a coastal boundary, which is the mean high water line. So that's the only thing kicking this into some type of CAM short form. So there's no other coastal resources on or adjacent to our piece of parcel.
And Andy,
thank you, Mr. Similiti. So I
May I
think we
just-
want to get a couple more questions in too, so
Sure.
we can continue the deep and the CAM offline as well.
Okay, next up is Ben.
Hey, everybody. Ben Handpeter. Quick disclosure, alternate on the ZBA, but tonight I'm just speaking for myself. First, I just wanted to say that I think this project will bring much needed housing to East Norwalk, so I'm happy to see this proposal. I did have a couple quick comments about the architecture. The building does strike me a little plain in comparison to a lot of other apartments that we've seen go up, both in East Norwalk and around the rest of the city. I don't know if you could pull up the slides again real fast, or if that would take too much time, but I wanted to just ask a couple of things. One, it looked to me like the parking area wasn't like walled off. It was sort of like open columns. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. It sort of reminded me, I don't know if you're familiar with these, the dingbats in Los Angeles, which is where I'm from, where you've got these like carports and the building is kind of up on these posts. This reminded me quite a bit of those. And yeah, I think just the I guess the western half of the building, because it's up on those posts and because it's so like squared off, it does just look a little bit, yeah, I think plain is the best word. Like I don't have a problem with the massing or the setback, like those are totally fine. I just don't know if there's any way that you can put like, I don't know the architectural terms, but just like some like angles or gables or whatever around the like sharp corner on the west side, just to like sort of break off those corners a little bit. Just some thought. Yeah, those are my comments.
We can work on that for sure. But I mean, here you can see this, these are just posts down there, which, as Andy said, the building's not being designed to FEMA compliant, but if it was going to be, this is the way you need to do it.
Gotcha. Yeah, it would be interesting to see what the rendering would look like if that was just like a full wall, if that would have much of an effect.
One of the
But yeah,
things
I think
it
it's
does
just
is it
that
makes
one
it-
like that one corner like leading off in the front right corner. It just feels like it sticks out compared to the rest of the building. Like the east side of the building looks great with the angled roofing and the awnings and all that. It looks like two different buildings got kind of like joined at the hip a little bit.
I think we want to try to get time in. Thank you so much for that, Ben. And we
Yeah,
want to try
yeah,
to get time in for a couple more folks. I think JJ has had her hand up for a while. If we can take JJ
Okay.
to
Thank you,
unmute
you guys.
yourself.
Thank you so much. I talk fast, so we'll get started.
Okay.
My question won't be able to be answered tonight, but I just want to propose, I'm going to say it, parking. What I don't understand is I totally get that we're in compliance with the regulations and the points and all that jazz. But what I don't understand as a landlord myself, why wouldn't parking be considered a needed amenity, even if it's not required in terms of what zoning requires? Why would you just have one space per bedroom? I don't really understand it, because where do we think those extra cars are going to go? And by the way, as we can see, there's a huge parking lot next to the East Norwalk Library. Perfect place for all these extra cars to park. People that have 2 cars per apartment, people that have guests. However, the fire department all the staff of the fire department use that parking lot, and it's also TTD owned. And they also use that parking lot for meetings at the East Norwalk Library that I attend several times a week or month, and also a staging area for some construction projects that TTD is either sponsoring or whatever. They always have construction trucks in there. So to me, development is great. Do whatever you want. However, within the parameters, but I don't understand the mentality around, well, we hit all the boxes and all that stuff, and we're going to make apartments. Well, sure, there's going to be some overflow of parking. Well, where do we think they're going to go? I just don't understand. Where do we think the cars are going to go? That's it. Thank you.
If I could just respond really quickly, there's actually 17 spaces on the site, right, Andy?
Yes, 1 per bedroom.
No, there's
17.
it's 13 apartments, so it's 1 per bedroom. But I mean, which honestly, we commonly would do that on a lot of our projects, and we maximize as many cars as we could get on the site. I mean, it's the site.
Yeah, sure. It's all about whether it's going to be an amenity or not. That's all. Because there is 1 per bedroom. If there are 2 bedrooms, that's 8 spaces. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's the regulation actually isn't 1 per bedroom, it's 1 per unit. And it's or 1.2, whatever EBTZ is now. So
Yes, I understand that.
and it's a chronic issue before this, and we know that it's just going to be exacerbated, and appreciate that folks don't assume that it's just going to always be on the table. And thank you, JJ, for bringing it up again. We have to,
Right.
we have to keep bringing it up. All right, we will take one more. I'm sorry. That's it. Who's up next? Charles, and then.
Okay, we have Jesse and JJ.
Hi, that's me. I'm Jessie McGarty. I just want to start by briefly saying I do not envy anyone who is bringing any sort of projects to this group. I get it, but I have to tell you, I'm one of the people who've been fighting on the other end. However, I will say for this project, it doesn't bother me nearly as much as the other one. But I too agree with Ben that I think the exterior could definitely be softened a bit to fit in a little bit more with the neighborhood. And I have to disagree where there are green roofs that are definitely a pitched roof. They do them all over Europe. They're quite lovely. And I think also the fact that the left side, if you're facing the development, does look a little like an afterthought that was put on. And my apologies, I don't mean to be so harsh, but if there was some way to put, I don't know, to add a second point to the other side or more awnings or something where it looks a little bit more homey. I think so many of us are really unhappy with how what we think of as our quaint little East Norwalk Beach neighborhood is now becoming more and more, I guess industrial isn't really the word, but more commercial. So anything that could take away from that harder exterior and soften it to fit in more with the neighborhood, I know would be greatly appreciated. And I do want to say I'm a huge art lover and I love the idea of putting some art on the side of a building, but that wall looks really big and really kind of plain. And even, I don't know if, somehow some sort of exterior siding on that to soften it as well. That's just my thought. I recognize that there's many more issues that folks are arguing about, but they are issues that are not with you, with the TOD, the new regulations that make all of these things okay. Most people in East Norwalk are not okay with it. So please know that we're decent people, but that's where it's coming from. Thank you for listening.
Understood.
Understood.
I will say too, and I won't be surprising Attorney Suchy when she hears this, because it was actually said at the public presentation to the P&Z when they did the preliminary review. And we've actually heard it in East Norwalk with other projects that this starts to resemble what we call barracks. And I think that's exactly what you're hearing from the folks who are concerned with the aesthetics. That when you have this boxy squared off thing and you're not really seeing architectural features, and I don't know what they're called either. But I think that you have to look at something that's going to make it more residential, more New England, less boxy. I'm even thinking shutters and things would make it look more homey than it would make, a building. But I hope that we can continue the conversation, despite the fact that you may be coming to public hearings soon, and maybe there could be some quick, relatively easy things to do that could make a dramatic difference in what this is going to look like. And then I'll just remind folks out still that with compliance, and Ms. Suchy knows we'll be reviewing it, even though staff does. This is entered as a special permit. So yes, we do get a bite at the apple with the 13 standards, but I won't go into how that worked out last time. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't evaluate all of them again the next time.
Well, Diane, as I mentioned, as I indicated from the outset, comments that you've raised today will certainly be considered by Mr. Cerrone, Mr. Sumalides. If there are ways that those can be implemented, I'm sure my client would be more than happy to do so if we are able to do so. And any questions that come up, certainly share them with me. I'm happy to answer them, and I will keep you informed as to where we are going forward with any modifications that come out of this meeting, and certainly keep you informed as to what happens out of the review by the design review consultant hired by the city, DeCarlo and Dahl. I think that's only fair that you're made aware of where that is, how it's progressing, and what changes have been suggested. Is that fair?
Thank you so much. Yeah. DeCarlo and Dahl is the same agency, by the way, that did the design review on Cemetery Street. And then I just want to mention one other thing too, Mr. Semelides and Mr. Cerrone, that when you take a look at the workforce housing or affordable housing, those units, I'm not sure if they appear to be next to the stairwells and elevator shafts. And I don't know if that's by design or just the layout, but I would say that there shouldn't be, any lesser of amenity or comfort or peace and enjoyment of workforce versus the other units.
Correct.
Agreed.
In that layout. Thank you so much. thank you for joining us. You're all welcome to stay on for the rest of our meeting. And if you don't stay on, we don't take it personal, and have a great evening, and we'll continue communicating with Attorney Suchy. Thank you.
All right,
That's
thanks for
fine.
your time.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are welcoming a number of speakers tonight who are speaking to the Shoreline Restoration Project for Veterans Memorial Park. And I believe the lead is going to be Sarah Crosby, who's the Director of Conservation for the Maritime Aquarium, the organization that actually applied for and was awarded the grant. And also Alexis Karakides, I think, is on, the city's conservation officer. And I believe Louise Washer is on as well from the Norwalk River Watershed Association, amongst other groups, I believe. So just to go ahead and keep things moving along, we can go ahead and if Miss Crosby is on, we can make her a co-host.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for having us tonight. Really excited to be here. So my name's Sarah Crosby, and I am the Director of Conservation and Policy at the Maritime Aquarium. I have been there for about a year. And prior to that, for 7 years, I was the Director of Harbor Watch, which is a water quality research and education program that's done a lot of work in Norwalk over the last 30 plus years. So I've been working in the area for a while. I'm a Greenwich native. And I'm here tonight to talk to you about Veterans Park. And so with my fantastic collaborators, Louise and Alexis, we applied for a Long Island Sound Futures Fund grant, which is a federal grant program, to do what's called a feasibility study, to do some restoration at the southern edge of Veterans Park. And so for this, I'm going to share my screen. So essentially what we're looking to do is there is a patch of land at the southern tip of Veterans Park in Norwalk, where we have substantial shoreline erosion occurring. So there is a sidewalk and some public space that is being rapidly eroded away due to storm damage and sea level rise. And on the water side of that, we have some natural marsh vegetation. Oh, there I am again. Oh yeah, and here's a picture of the site. So we have some natural marsh vegetation, as you can see in this picture. And one thing that we are thinking about doing is how can we restore this part of Veterans Park to both improve the resilience of the public access space while also providing some habitat benefits for Norwalk Harbor. And so Veterans Park historically was all salt marsh before it went through a series of transformations to become what it is today. It was historically a salt marsh. And so we are interested in looking at what opportunities exist for doing some restoration of that habitat while maintaining that public access, of course. And so this grant will give us funding to bring on a consultant who will do a feasibility study so that we can understand what the options are for that restoration. So we're envisioning something like a living shoreline. We're envisioning a combination of sort of marsh grasses and maybe some things sort of further at the water's edge, like perhaps shellfish or things like that. So really the goal of this project is to just assess all of the possible options for restoration. So we won't be doing any shovels in the mud as part of this study, but what we will emerge from this study with is a series of choices that we could make to move forward with planning for a restoration project at the site. So it's really the first step towards making sort of a substantial restoration there possible. And so very little work has happened to date. And so that's why we wanted to talk to you, at the early stage of this to just get any thoughts that anyone in this group has about this potential project. We would also welcome a representative from this group Oh, thank you, Alexis, for saving me from myself. So you can see in red here on this image is an outline of the potential study area. So you can see that it doesn't include the majority of the sort of people spaces in the park. It is really focused on the intertidal area and the very southern tip of the park. And so like I was saying, we're really looking for just early ideas, early engagement from the community so that we can understand what ideas you all have, as well as hopefully identify someone from this group who would be willing to serve on a stakeholder committee that we're going to assemble, which is just going to be a group that we bring together probably quarterly to talk through what ideas we're getting from the consultants, see what decisions need to be made, and to continue to seek feedback from the community. And so that was really our intent tonight, was to just mostly let you all know that this work was occurring, get any thoughts and feedback that you have, and invite you to stay engaged as we move forward. Like I said, we're pretty far away from actually being able to do the restoration work, but this is a really necessary first step to be able to make that work possible. So I'm not sure that I've done it justice with my screen sharing snafu, but happy to invite Louise or Alexis to say anything that they want to add, and also just share how excited we are about this project. We think the site has tremendous potential to restore some of the lost habitat that Norwalk Harbor historically had. So really excited to be able to work on it. And happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I don't know if you want to leave the map up as people talk. I think we've got a clear understanding where it is. And I think I just saw come through on chat that we already have one volunteer who's willing to serve as the stakeholder representative here for East Norwalk.
A master gardener with expertise in coastal ecosystems. That's,
Oh, okay. So you couldn't ask for anything better. So let's.
I know, no kidding. Huh?
Hey,
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, Michelle, you might be coming for my job. That sounds it sounds like a perfect expertise. So thank you so much for volunteering. We will reach out to you. If you could put your contact information in the chat.
I have it.
Louise has it. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, that was a buddy.
And
Wonderful.
Sarah, you've spoken at Sherwood Island State Park, where I am the president of the Friends Group.
Yes,
Ago. Yeah. So
yes. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I think we have a few hands raised. And if Charles is still on, if we can,
Yes.
if you know what they were in order. we can
Yes,
take some
Roberta
questions,
was
comments.
next.
Roberta, hi.
Hi,
Hi.
I am so excited about this project.
Yay.
Wonderful. Me too.
I'm thrilled about it. And I had actually already reached out to Louise and told her I'd be really happy to be, the stakeholder connection between ENNA, whatever. I mean, whoever does it is fine. I'm happy to lend my hands. I'm a professional horticulturist and a garden designer, and have worked with Louise as a volunteer for the Pollinator Pathway Project. So I literally live across the street. I'm thrilled that this is going on. So keep me in the loop, and however I can be of assistance, I'm here.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Yeah, we think this is going to be a really exciting project, and that area in the park, we think it's going to be beautiful when it's done, but also provide really important habitat. So
yeah,
really
absolutely.
But
here is one question. I mean, I know that it sounds like the first step right now is just the feasibility study. And then you're going to move on from there. But what are the thoughts about like the asphalt there? I mean, are you guys going to get enough funding to put in some sort of a boardwalk, do you think? Or is the asphalt going to stay as is for now? Like, what's the deal?
So yeah, it would be really premature to speculate on that, I think, at this stage. So what we're going to hopefully get from the consultant is basically all of those decision points, and what would it look like if we had a boardwalk, and what would it look like if we didn't? And then the next phase of this will be going for grant funding to do the actual design. And that's where we would flesh out those details. So we're hopeful that there is funding available for these types of coastal resilience, habitat restoration projects. So we're hopeful that we can continue to pursue, once we have the feasibility study, that sort of unlocks the door for those next types of planning funding.
Great.
I would
And can I
say
just,
no
thanks,
asphalt.
Roberta. And before we go on to the next comments as well, I'll just add that hopefully you folks were aware too that there's an existing Veterans Memorial Park master plan. And I believe that there's funding within that plan for exactly some of what you're looking at within your grant, but then also for the other items like Roberta was just mentioning as well. So there should be collaboration, but in the meantime, even though there's an existing plan, the city has embarked on yet another parks master plan. And so for whatever may not be a carryover, I think it would be a good collaboration with the city to make sure that those funds aren't lost that were originally approved by our common council. That I suspect includes a good bunch of what we're talking about here tonight. Thanks. Charles, who's
Okay, next up is Michelle.
Hi. I have spent some time, lots of time down around Veterans Park, and especially surveying the existing botanical resources. The whole area that you're looking at the map on that southern tip has abundant native vegetation, including marsh elder, Iva frutescens, at least 6 species of common edge habitat plants. And these are the ones that are on the outside of the sidewalk are being mowed down by the city. So I wrote a note to them last year and asked them to stop mowing the native plants, to decrease the edge. They should mow 1 foot on either side of the sidewalk, not 6 feet, and take down all the native vegetation that's protecting the park from being flooded. So, Iva frutescens and other similar plants are robust plants with root structures and branches that are preventing shoreline erosion. And those existing plants should, first of all, be protected. Do no harm, until we get this study underway, et cetera. That's my main point, is let's protect the existing abundant natural vegetation that is already there.
I think that's a great point. Definitely outside of my my purview, but we are in close coordination through Alexis with Rec and Parks, and so we can certainly raise that. I don't want to speak for Alexis.
I have posted all my sightings on iNaturalist. So if you're familiar with the iNaturalist app, you can look at the Veterans Park and you will see my postings of the types of vegetation that exist.
Fantastic, thank you. And sorry, like the previous poster, I had a screaming child in the middle of that question. So you might have seen me sort of run down the hallway quickly. So I apologize for that. Thank you so much. We'll definitely keep that comment and take that back to the city.
Well, Michelle, it would be cool to have a list of what you've identified there, just to know if you've had them on iNaturalist. I would love to see that.
Is that Louise asking?
Yeah, that's me. That's Louise.
I'll send you an email, Louise.
Thank you, Michelle. Charles, I don't know who's up next, Deborah or
Deborah's next. Deborah, please unmute.
Hi, actually, my husband has the question, so I'm going to let him ask.
Hi, I'm Frank Ross. I live on Seaview Avenue. And first, I want to say thanks to Sarah for bringing this forward, because the park really needs this kind of investment. And I just want to say that if we could get that whole section of tar out of there and just let it go back to the natural habitat, that'd be the best thing for that park. And it would preserve the things that they already have in there. And hopefully we can encourage them not to keep building on there. and let that just come back to nature somewhat anyway. So that was just my comment. And I just want to thank you for, getting this forward.
Thank you so much. I deserve like the least credit out of the group. I was just the applicant and leading the charge on logistics. But this idea came from a number of different folks, Louise and Alexis, but also Norm Bloom and Dick Harris and a bunch of other sort of community folks. And so, we've been really excited to see so much support for the project and hope to get a lot of input from all of you going forward. So I appreciate that.
Okay, next up is JJ.
Thank you. So I live on First Street and it connects with Seaview. One of my observations about Betts Park is there's a lot of children there. So children take advantage of the park, and there's also a lot of people who smoke weed in the parking lot. And obviously more adults are doing that. And so I'm in education as a career. So my bias is that whatever it turns out to be in terms of structure, that the function of it becomes educational in a way where people who live in Norwalk can partake in the waterfront part of Norwalk, because there's a lot of people that fish in that area. There are whole families that kind of gather around there. Every time I walk around that loop where the asphalt is falling into the water, there's all sorts of people with fishing poles and children running around, and it's kind of a beautiful thing. But if that were more structured, so that it would more of an invite versus people feeling like they're trespassing or doing something that's not really part of the park, that would be great. So whether it's a pier or whatever, perhaps it would transform some of the image of Betts Park, at least that I have. I don't need people. I don't care if people smoke pot. It doesn't matter to me. But that's pretty much what the parking lot is full of at any evening. So anyway, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you so much. It's I think there's a lot of opportunity for education, and I know it's something that Louise and I have talked a lot about, and the aquarium is obviously very passionate about, and so we're hoping that as we move forward, there's opportunity for interpretive signage and a lot of more sort of engagement in addition to the public access. So I think that hopefully we'll be able to keep things going in that direction. Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully we can do nature walks and stuff, more of those kind of things, coordinating with the different community groups in the aquarium. I think that's the most exciting part of it. And hopefully it's the first of these many restoration projects in the harbor. I mean, we want it to be, an example of how we can be restoring, in a natural way, the edges of the harbor. That's what I'm excited about. So JJ, yes. Totally. We'll rope you in when we're doing it.
I'm ready. One last sentence on here is that, I mean, if when we talk about East Norwalk and we talk about, the building projects and such, I think part of what we're talking about is that we understand Norwalk to be a seaside town. Yet there are so many people in Norwalk that don't have access to the shoreline. And I mean, what a beautiful thing that we endorse Norwalk and that sort of identity, new identity. Okay, thank you. I'm done.
Okay, so thank you to everyone for bringing this forward and keeping us in the loop. And I'm really encouraged that we have two extraordinary people in our community, Roberta and Michelle, who are willing to step up and represent the community as for the stakeholder group that ENNA is. And I'm super excited to follow this as it goes forward. We know it's the beginning stages. But we know you'll keep, us engaged and hopefully, just like tonight, be seeking some feedback on this as you go along. And, as you're collaborating with the city, make sure that taking into account what the community would like to see there. Thank you so much. And then, Sarah, you may have said it at the beginning. I apologize if I missed it, but so then would you be the primary focal point for this? I think I've been basically emailing you and Louise. Should I continue?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, the three of us are in very close communication about this, so any one of us can make sure that the information is shared with the other two. So please feel free to keep emailing us. That'd be great.
We'll do that because we're bound to get some questions and comments and suggestions and things afterwards as well. And
Great,
just want to
yeah.
make sure that we can funnel those into you as they come in. And we remind folks at the end, of our meetings to go ahead and continue the dialogue via email, and we'll hook everyone up as well. Thank you.
I'll also pop my email address in the chat in case anyone wants to reach out directly. Happy to talk to folks. Thank you so much, and thank you for giving us time on your busy agenda.
Thank you. I'm glad
that our presentation was slightly less contentious. I was a little scared after the first one. How it was going to go. But thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. And again, as before, you're welcome to stay on. Okay, so I know folks are eager to hear tonight about what is going on with Cemetery and Mill Pond. And there's been a lot of things going on in the background, and unfortunately we couldn't share some of that while things were still going on in the background. But at this point, we are able to share that indeed, as we talked about a month or so ago, several of the adjoining property owners, who are the folks who we call they have legal standing, are the folks who would be in a position that they could actually file an appeal against the City of Norwalk's Planning and Zoning Commission for their permit approval for Cemetery Street. And several of the property owners there have come together and they agreed to do that. And as of last week, the legal filing was actually submitted through the court system, and so the appeal is actually legally filed at this point. I'm unclear as of today. We may get an answer tonight whether the City of Norwalk itself has actually been served the papers, which is a requirement that may have happened today. I'm not sure, but we'll get an answer on that. But regardless, the actual appeal document is now with the civil court under their zoning section. And you can see that now on the docket. So we do want to, on behalf of the community, because the neighbors are not just doing this for their own benefit, they decided to take this on themselves on behalf of the entire East Norwalk neighborhood community, because other property owners who are as concerned and don't have standing, don't have the legal ability that they have. So, but in addition to those property owners, there are several of them. There are a number of other property owners that do qualify, either by virtue of literally abutting the parcel or by being an adjoining property owner that's within 100 feet of the parcel property itself. Those are identified within the adjoining properties are identified in the legal notices. So we have that list, and other parcels that we suspect are within 100 feet. We'll be compiling a list of that as well. We've been advised by the attorney that we can continue to add aggrieved abutters onto the appeal as additional plaintiffs or appellants, whatever the proper term is. So if you are on this Zoom and you do fit into one of those categories, you can either reach out to us proactively and let us know your interest in having your name added to this appeal, because we think there's strength in numbers. And if not, what we'll be doing is compiling those and be reaching out directly to ask folks if they would want to be added on. We think the more people that join in on this that are aggrieved and have the right to join in will send a stronger message to both the city and the applicants that folks are still willing to stand up and get back to the table, revisit this entire ruling, and then hopefully get it scaled back for all the very compelling reasons everyone put together. No surprise, we've mentioned this all along, that we had a very successful GoFundMe campaign, and thank you to all the very generous donors who funded that. We were able to reach the money that was required to even have a retainer to even begin this process. And so that has been satisfied with a little bit of money left over. but we have been advised that as these things continue through the legal process, that they ultimately could cost a lot more money depending on motions and filings and if it actually comes to litigation. And so the ENNA at this point then needs to step out of that role, and this becomes the responsibility of the abutters, the folks who are appealing, to be able to have a GoFundMe campaign to continue to raise additional funding. And so you can expect to see another GoFundMe campaign coming. And we hope that everyone in the community, be it 10,000 or 1,000 or 5,000, whatever is in your budget, if you can help to make sure that the funds are available to continue this, so that we can come together as a community and support these neighbors and support the effort that they're taking on behalf of everyone here to, again, to take every legal avenue that we can to either have this completely reconsidered based on everything that's in the appeal, which is a lot of legal stuff. You can certainly read it for yourself as well, but also with the hope of getting this thing scaled back. So that is the update on that, and I can take some questions on it if you want. Why don't we do that? If anybody has any questions right now on that I can answer.
Yeah, there are two in the chat. What are the key points of the complainants? What are they naming for the appeal? What legal standing will they have for an appeal?
Okay. So good questions here. So there's a few different things. Well, the legal standing is because they are abutters and a joiner. And so aggrieved based on the size of this development, and that the quality of life components of it weren't adequately considered or fairly considered by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And so a portion of it has to do with whether or not their decisions were predetermined. And there are some factual basis for that that's identified in the appeal itself. I'll just backtrack and say that when you file for this, you're not actually presenting your whole case. You're only presenting the relevant points of the appeal, so that it continues through, and then you present all of the really detailed stuff. And so the argument's being made that the decision was arbitrary and capricious. Another main factor was actual a question of whether they actually do comply with the zone. And that's going to be very interesting. It's some things we discovered as we did more due diligence into the wording of the actual regulation. There's a strong point that was raised that at least one of the commissioners should have recused himself from the vote based on a known public bias against both the ENNA board itself, who represented the community, and against community residents themselves, and against the neighborhood. So those are a few of the highlights. There's a number of points, but taken in total, it's a pretty compelling case. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that that two things actually. There's an argument still to be made about whether or not this particular parcel was spot zoned, and also the fact that the sitting commission had clearly predetermined what their vote was going to be, regardless of what the public comment was or any expert testimony that came back, on the side of the neighborhood.
Okay, another question was from Jim. He's very close by, but he doesn't know if he's 100 feet and qualifies. Is there an actual list of properties?
There's only a list of the abutters or the adjoining ones, which does include across the street, but there is not a list provided for the 100 feet because they're not required to notify them. So this topic actually came up the other night at one of our meetings about just being able to take Google Map or another mechanism online to be able to go to the closest point of their parcel to the closest point of your parcel, and you can actually do an accurate measurement through Google Maps to be able to do that. And so anyone who thinks that they're close and they're interested, I would suggest that you do exactly that. Jim, I think I know where your house is, and I would say it's probably pretty close. So I would definitely take a look at that. Ben, I see a question here. I believe that in the docket, which I now have the link for, I can post that in the email and get that out to folks. I believe in the docket that you can actually click on the actual appeal document itself, but I'll double check that, and then I can send that over to you. Yes, Christchurch is an adjoining because you're across the street. And so if you're across the street, I think regardless of how many feet, you're an adjoining neighbor. Several years ago, the laws were rewritten to instead of just having abutting, like literally abutting parcels, they expanded it to say notification also has to go to parcels that don't touch, but that they're across the street. And that's a qualification for Christchurch. Homeowners' lands that are located on the pond, if you don't actually touch the parcel with your property, you fall into the 100-foot rule. So again, if you're on the pond and you're not sure, you'll either want to literally measure or use an online tool like Google Maps and check out where your parcel is. By the way, for people who live on the pond, I just saw an application come through the other day, maybe sooner than that, and I missed it, but there's a single family application for 289 East Avenue. So I have to take a look into that. It seems that it may be a little empty parcel in between two existing structures. And I'm looking to put a one family house there that if their drawings are accurate, it looks like it sits right on the pond, like within inches of the pond. So that's also posted on the Planning and Zoning website under pending applications. If anyone lives close to that or you have an interest, if you want to take a look at that, I'll take a look at it, but not until the end of the week. I think right now it's in as a CAM hearing for coastal area management, but it will come up for full permit application. I don't believe it's a special permit though, but I can double check that as well. 289 East Avenue is the address for that. Then I see a comment about people using the parking lot for that parcel, and also the excellent point that was raised as well regarding 49 Van Zant. Overflow parking is just going to find the path of least resistance, and people on a Sunday, JJ, or whenever, or it's at night, they're going to say, oh, nobody's using the library, nobody's using this, so we can all park there. And then the burden becomes, the library having to be the bad guy and tow things, and what's the liability for someone parking there and having something happen to their car. Parking is one of the absolute main issues that we have with that development. And Attorney Suchy is not surprised to hear that, and she'll hear more about it. And some other things that weren't raised here. And also just to know that the P&Z Commission actually raised a number of points of things they were unhappy with. Not the least of which was the design, the layout, the barracks, the lack of architectural detail that made it feel, a part of the neighborhood. Also had an issue with the underground parking and the columns, and you could see right through, etc. Okay, so the other thing with Cemetery Street is we need to get some clarification on what the next steps are. My understanding is that these things can just kind of cycle through pretty slowly. You file it, and then things may not happen for a while, and then the court then reviews things, and they have to get documents, and then there's motions and there's filings, and so we'll kind of get an update from the attorney to see what the next steps are going to be. But for sure, for now, we want to make sure that we can add other people, if possible, to the appeal, and then also make sure that at some point we are ready to go in case additional funds are needed. Okay, so the most important thing going on in East Norwalk right now is something that's the most important thing that's going on in the entire city. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this tonight, because one of the things that needs to happen is for residents here who are concerned about development in the city, really need to be engaged with this project that's called the Zoning Regulations Update. And essentially what it is the city's proposal to rezone almost all of the city and into regulations that dictate what you can and can't do with your property. The part of the purpose was because the city itself, from one end to the other, consisted of 31 distinct different zones or uses of your property. And so they wanted to try to consolidate that just to make it a little bit clearer and cleaner and not have so many gaps where you have like little portions of neighborhood, one zone, and then one street over, it's a different zone, and then it switches back. And so to a certain extent, we applaud that. But what has happened now is there's a proposed zoning map that's going to make some significant changes within the city. The ENNA emails are providing links to the meetings, to the videos, to the maps, and we really encourage people to watch the meetings and listen. Even if you look at it and you see that it's a 2-hour meeting, it's really important for you to do that because there's no way for ENNA to be able to take that magnitude of information and be able to, kind of just get that back out to the community in a Reader's Digest point of view. And we don't know, which points may be most relative to some people and not to others. And because this is going to impact the city and East Norwalk so significantly, it's really important that you're opening the links that we send you and watching the videos or reading the transcripts or looking at the documents and then taking advantage of all the tools that the city is giving you to be able to understand what these changes are. There's going to be a series of public meetings on these in addition to the 2 they've already had. And we'd like you to watch those first as kind of a primer to zoning update. For District C that we live in, we know that there's going to be a P&Z presentation of this on May 2nd at City Hall. And we'll get some more details on the timing of that. But we have also asked for Steve Kleppen or one of his staff to make a separate presentation to ENNA for 06855 over here and have invited them to our May 15th meeting. And we hope that they'll be able to do that because they're offering to go out into other neighborhood associations and present this. So we want to make sure that they're hitting all of the major neighborhood groups, which of course we are one of. And if that's the case and they do accept, and we hope they do, that you could attend then either or both of those presentations. Okay. All right. I'm so sorry about that. So when you go into the main city website, you click on city government at the top, and then you'll be able to click on the individual departments. And I had clicked on, oops, no, I just lost it here. Sorry. So I had scrolled down and clicked on planning and zoning department. And then from there, I'm going to click on zoning regulations update. Don't look at the other one that says regulations and map because that's like the existing one. So click on zoning and regulations update. And this is a wealth of information that you'll want to read. So this is all about the update project itself. And it also gives you the timeline. It provides you with a fillable form that you can go in and make comments, ask questions, suggestions, etc. I'll show you that in a minute. About in the middle of the page, you'll see that they've come up with a series of information sheets on some of the information that residents would be most interested in learning about. Things like what is zoning, what is form-based code for zoning, which this project is all about. It will talk about bulk and height standards, the things that we look at when we're talking about property setbacks, how many stories, how much footprint of a property can a building actually take up, the zoning map, and also the schedule and outreach for this project as well. But they also have other information sheets here, like the flood hazard zone overlay, coastal area management, sustainability, grading, drainage, and vegetation. And I think they're going to be adding more information sheets to these, but this is a really good place to start, to kind of bop around and educate yourself. Then you come down to the feedback and comments, and they're encouraging people to submit as many things as you can to the city. You're just going to click on the graphic over here. It will take you to an online format to be able to do that. The next section is the new regulations themselves, which are divided into 9 articles. And you can click on each one of these. I'm not suggesting you read all the articles, but you'll want to definitely click on things like the zoning districts, the zoning map, understand some of the definitions, etc. But then you get down to the actual maps here. The map that'll be on your left is just a PDF version of the zoning map. Basically, you'll just see how everything lays out, there, and you can zoom in on each of the individual parcels and neighborhoods. But on the right side is the proposed zoning map that's interactive. And this is the one that's truly interactive. You'll see in a second when this comes up that you can then click on your own parcel and begin to understand what you're allowed to do there now and how your parcel may be changing under this, under these guidelines. You'll also be able to bop around the city and take a look at, I guess I could say, as important as it is to understand the zones that are changing and the ones that are going to be getting higher density. I think it's also important for people to take a look at these maps and understand which areas of the city are not changing. And you may want to ask some questions about that as well. So when you come into the screen right now, it's actually much larger. It's based just on, geography. So it's a much larger map that you're going to see that takes into account much more than Norwalk. But when you come in, you just click on a disclaimer that you've read how to use the map. You click OK. And then in the upper left, you're going to see find address or place. And this is where the interactive feature comes in. So basically everybody knows where I live. So I'm just going to put in my own address here, and we'll use this as a quick example. And because this is a national map that they're drawing from, to be able to use this, if there's an Olmsted place someplace else, it's also going to come out like Vermont and Arkansas, etc. So just make sure you're clicking on the one that is for Norwalk for your parcel. Okay. Now, can everybody see this now, where you can see the outline of the parcels?
Yes.
Okay. Let me move this out of the way. Hang on one sec. Okay, so this is my parcel right here. And if I click on the little box up here at the top, it's going to open this up. If my computer's not too slow here. Okay, let me try this again here. Okay, let me stop here first. So you have each of these boxes is going to have 2 pages to it. And depending on where you're toggling in from, it's either going to show you the proposed zone first, or it's going to show you the existing zone. So for my parcel, I'm going to start here with the existing zone. And the way I'm toggling is with this little arrow that's up here at the top. So it tells me that the existing zone that I'm in is called the B residence zone. And when you click on the link, it will take you into the existing regulations for what is allowed in the B residence zone, and also the existing schedule of the height and the bulk schedules. Now, unfortunately, it takes you into the entire article for that zone. So you have to then go and look for residence zone B. No, it won't. And I believe they do go in order here of A, AAA, B, etc. Okay, so here's the B residence zone, and I'll be able to read on these pages exactly what's allowed in this zone. And for example, I'll point this out because this is going to be one of the most interesting things in terms of East Norwalk, is that B residence zones that are here right now are single family detached dwellings. And you can go on to read what other structures are allowable by right within the B zone, okay? So in terms of residential, I'm allowed to have a single family structure here. In the proposed zone, when you toggle back, my new zone for my property is called CD3, and you'll see all the listings of all these names and numbers that you can refer back to in a chart. And now it says that I'm a suburban 2-family community district. And I can bring up the use table for that. And you can see when this loads that they have very graphic tables now that are relatively user-friendly to understand what you can and can't do with your property in a particular zone. And on each of these, you'll see that there's a page where across the top, it lists all of these new zones. And as you read down the list of possible uses, you can follow this legend of whether something is permitted, not permitted, or it might be permitted by special permit, for example. So we're not going to go through all of this tonight. What I wanted to do was just give you a taste of how this map works, and for people to understand that within the city, there's a number of zones that are changing significantly in terms of what's allowed now and what's going to be allowed in the future. In East Norwalk, when these colors come back up, or I may have to go back out here on the map. This area here that you see shaded in kind of this, I don't know what this color is, like this camel color. For the most part, this entire area was zoned or is zoned today as single family housing. Under the new zone recommendations in this proposal, all of these now change to multifamily zoning. And you can see in East Norwalk that this comes down, it comes south of the tracks in Winfield. It goes over, heading east. It comes down into the Mill Pond area and in the Cove area, all down here. And then it stops kind of shy here of getting into Marvin Beach to the south, and then Pine Hill area over to the east. Okay, so what does this mean? And like I said, you can actually look at the entire city and be able to see and click on these zones so that you can see what they mean. But as much as we're concerned with all of the city, for now, I think that East Norwalk really need to understand what's going to be going on in East Norwalk proper, all of 06855. And that's why we're encouraging people to get involved now, to be able to understand what this project is, what they're recommending, what the changes are going to be, what the impact is on your property. For example, are you zoned one family now and it's being changed to multifamily zoning? What does that mean in terms of what you can do with your property value? Are there parcels that are within East Norwalk that may comply now with zoning regulations, but that would be designated a legal non-conforming use under a new regulation? So there's a lot to take into account, not the least of which is trying to understand, one, why the city is actually doing this beyond consolidating zones and making it cleaner and easier for people to understand. But what is the actual purpose now of increasing areas all over the city, basically South Norwalk and East Norwalk for the most part, to take one family zoning and to convert it into multifamily zoning? And more importantly, what is the impact of that in terms of what population density could possibly be, in terms of the number of people, the number of cars, the impact on our school system, infrastructure, water, sewer, utilities, police department, fire department, health department, medical services, etc. So I see somebody out here raising their hand, and we're coming up on 9 o'clock, and I see some people have dropped off, but I would at least want to get this open right now. We could just spend an entire evening, and we're going to have to do that at some point, just talking about these zoning changes. But I can't stress, and I'll open it up for comments in a minute, I cannot stress enough how important it is for folks to be proactive and to take the initiative to start educating yourself now on what this project is. If you wait for the public hearings in June and in the summertime, it's going to be, the ship has already sailed in terms of, trying to ask questions of what's really going on. People really need to understand this now so that we can be better prepared. And after I answer some questions and take some comments, I do just want to speak briefly about what a comment that Steve Kleppen made recently that we think people should know about. So, Charles, do we have some hands up right now?
Yes, there's one from Jim.
Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, I'm muted. Can you hear me, Diane?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So in my chat also, I'm often asked by many, including we just had an open house at a house across the street from me, even by people moving in. Obviously, it's front page with Cemetery Street, but the Mason Lodge. I see now that you still have the map posted, and that shows where the Mason Lodge is, right opposite of, obviously, the Cemetery Street Mill Pond. Actually, I still want to keep calling it Cemetery Street because I know that irks, well, whatever. Sorry, I go off on tangents. But so that I see is, what does that mean? Does that mean that it's still a AAA zone? We often hear of if that gets sold, will it be residential? Can it be a supermarket? Can it be another ridiculously development that's being proposed on Cemetery Street?
Right. So that's one of the examples here of where, like, we need to go into the parcel itself and actually take a look at that in the map. To actually click on the parcel itself. And so I would recommend, like, offline on that one, just in the interest of time, that you actually go into the map and click on that. Yeah.
I can see it though now, Diane, and then I'm speaking for myself. It looks kind of laborious just to get to the map. You have to go through that answer yes, no, whatever. Yeah. It's almost like
it's actually pretty quick once you have the link. I mean, it's just like getting to any other city page. I think we've already put in the request, as others did, to have this on the front page of the city website, like they just did with charter revision. But once you have the link, and I think in our emails we bypassed all of that and we gave you the link right to the map. So you can
Okay.
actually skip this. You are going to have to click OK when you go in, though. Just
I mean, I'll try it just so I get it myself, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and it would just be a good exercise for you to get comfortable with using the map as well.
All right. Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, and who else is online?
Okay, there's
here?
a couple questions in the chat. One is the information available on like hard copy printouts at City Hall?
I believe they can make it available. Obviously, I think what you'd want to do is just send them an email ahead of time that you want to be able to pick it up in hard copy there. I would be very surprised if they charged anyone for it, because they really need to make this material available to everyone, regardless of their, computer or, printing capabilities. And that request would go into Brian Baker or Steve Kleppen at City Hall. And then you'd be able to pick it up right there at the zoning office. I don't think they'd be able to mail it out, but if you're looking for hard copies, then you'd be able to get it at the P&Z office.
Okay. Also, who makes the decisions?
The decisions on these zone changes, I guess is the question.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yes.
two things. So the recommended, these are the proposed changes right now. These recommended changes were a collaboration of planning and zoning staff, Steve Kleppen, and the consultant who they hired to do a complete rewrite and cleanup of the zone. But they did this in collaboration with also meeting with different stakeholder groups and getting feedback that goes back. I want to say it's almost 2 years now since this thing actually started. And so there's been different stakeholder groups throughout the city, neighborhood groups, developers, obviously, probably Chamber of Commerce, all different groups, and including East Norwalk Neighborhood Association. In the public hearing or the public presentation the other night, I did specifically ask if the consultants were provided with the ENNA ad hoc zoning committee document that we produced a year or two ago in reference to upcoming changes. So I didn't get an answer to that yet, but I told them they didn't have to answer that night, but we will get an answer to it. So that's where the design came from. Now, who makes the ultimate decision is an interesting question. I can tell you who doesn't make any of the decisions with this is our elected officials on the Common Council. The approval of this ultimately rests with the appointed Planning and Zoning Commission. So it won't see the light of day with council committees or the Common Council. So the ultimate decision will be made by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and they generally make their decisions based on two things: the staff recommendations, which is Steve Kleppen, and feedback from the community and feedback from experts and professionals in the fields that can address some of these things. Having said that, the type of feedback from the community that's most likely to be ignored is just the type of feedback that we don't want this in our neighborhood. We don't want any more density. We don't want, our neighborhood to change. The most compelling type of feedback that they can get would be for people to be able to articulate the exact impact either on their own personal parcel and their property value and their quality of life, or more importantly, what's going to happen in the zone. And the need would really be there for the neighborhood groups to get together and should look at hiring real professional consultants and experts, analyze this, and then provide feedback to the city. But I do want to say, because we are going to post this, I believe, Charles, tomorrow or this week. So in the meeting that Planning and Zoning had on Wednesday night last week, and the video is up there, where this map was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And just remember, this map was not presented to anyone at the prior public presentation. because they were afraid people would just focus on this map and go, oh my God, look at the stuff that's changing, and ignore the whole presentation about the justification for doing this. So they withheld the map from everyone until last Wednesday night. And then they made a presentation to the Planning and Zoning Commission and opened it up for public comment and questions and answers. It wasn't a public hearing, it was just more of an open dialogue. So in addition to a lot of concerns that I raised on behalf of ENNA, I did raise a concern about who it is going to make these decisions, and based on what would they be looking to modify something. And in particular, I wanted to know how does the feedback from the public weigh in terms of being able to modify things. And the short answer that was given to that is that even if, I'm going to try to get this verbatim, Mr. Kleppen said that basically these recommendations come from him based on his professional expertise and working with the consultants, and that's what will be presented to the commission. And that even if 2,000 residents were to come forward and strongly object to something being in there or not being in there, but that he felt was the best interest of the city, that he would fight till he's blue in the face to make sure that it stays in there.
I can speak for myself only, and speaking as a staff member, if there's 2,000 people that think something's a bad idea because they don't want it in their neighborhood, but if my thinking is it's something that's better for the city for the long term, I'm going to advocate for it till I'm blue in the face. And if ultimately the commission decides against me, then they decide against me. And that's their call. They're the body that makes the final decision.
I'm not saying this to be confrontational. I'm not saying it to be antagonistic or to be able to solicit things from folks, other than to be aware that this is on the record. It was said actually during that comment segment, and it's important for people to know going into something like this, when we hear that comment on the front end, it just further supports our theory that in Norwalk, public hearings aren't really to hear from the public. They're merely a public meeting where the public can observe and say things. And so I am very concerned that we have a planning and zoning director that would make that comment, especially at this stage. And I think if folks who are still on here tonight, however many people are here, if you are as concerned about that, I think you need to give that some thought and know that that's potentially what we're up against. We are going to be, ENNA is going to be posting that segment of that audio and a video this week, and get that out in the public domain, because we feel that strongly that statement just speaks volumes to this disregard, the disrespect, and the dismissive nature of how the public is treated in Norwalk, especially under this department. And to answer the question that just popped up there, Steve Kleppen does not live in Norwalk. We get that question all the time. So he does not live here. He lives up the line. He lives in New Milford. That's also public knowledge. So I'm not saying anything that people can't look up themselves. So I don't want to end this meeting on such a down note. And I don't just want to be like pounding into people, because I do want to say, first of all, we need board members. And I know someone had also written in with an interest. We need board members and we need volunteers to help. It takes a lot of work to just even go through this stuff, to digest it, to, come up with comments and suggestions and concerns, and to be able to put together presentations on things both for the public so that we can help the public understand, which is part of our responsibility. If people choose not to do anything, that's one thing, but shame on ENNA if a year from now, thousands of residents here say they changed the zone. I didn't even know about it. So yes, the city should be notifying people, and we're going to put a lot of pressure on them to start getting postcards out to property owners so people actually know about this. But ENNA has a responsibility, and we take it seriously to make sure that we're getting information to you so that you can become informed, and then you can become engaged to the level that you either want to be able to, or that you are able to. But it's just overwhelming amount, and so that's why we're looking for help. And this is why we've got to get started on this early. In addition to that, we are encouraging what was the Coalition of Norwalk Neighborhood Associations to revamp and get back together again. Unfortunately, when COVID struck, CNNA kind of disbanded, because mostly what we were doing with all the groups was holding neighborhood forums in person, which on a variety of really relevant topics. And so CNNA, which is the umbrella group for all the neighborhood associations, really needs to get back together. And because this needs to be a citywide effort, regardless of whether someone's neighborhood is being impacted or not. What's happening with these changes is going to impact everyone in this city. And we all need to stick together to understand what the implications are, to understand what's potentially great about this that we should be supporting, and maybe some things we've been waiting a long time for, but really to understand the things that could be detrimental and that aren't really being taken into account for the impact on this city, again, by someone who doesn't live here. Planning and zoning commissioners, by the way, all have to live here because they're appointed by the mayor, and they're appointed by the mayor and approved by the council. Okay, so comments, and then before we talk about a funny subject, maybe not so funny, I think it could be funny. Judy has her hand up, and then we'll go on and start to close out.
All right, Diane, I just had a question. The charter revisions, do you know where those stand? Because I think one thing that maybe we should try to get into the charter revisions is, looking at how decisions are made, like on things like the zoning map, whether staff does it, Yeah,
and they're not getting into like the real nitty gritty of the operations of the city. They're looking at things that are really controlled by the charter. But I can tell you one thing though, Judy, that people should consider lobbying for is a discussion we've been having for years now, is whether or not the city of Norwalk should have elected planning and zoning commissioners versus appointed. And so that is a relevant topic in terms of the charter. And I think that people should be raising that. At this point right now, Judy, there's a ton of stuff that's posted on the Charter Revision Committee website, on the city site. Their icon is on the front page now, so it's easy to get to. You look for an icon at the bottom, or on your phone, it'll be at the top, I think, and just click on Charter Revision Commission, and you will have more information there than you ever wanted to know. And like I said at the beginning, as far as we know today, that public hearing, the first public hearing, is still scheduled for this Wednesday night. So if you feel strongly about that, even if you're not delving into the whole charter revision thing, because like you'd rather have a root canal, honestly, I got to tell you, that's how those things read. You can still jump on and say, hey, I'm interested in, making some of these positions that are appointed, elected positions. I'm interested in imposing term limits. I'm opposed to a 4-year mayoral term. I'd like to see more commissioners on the police and the traffic authority, things like that. You can speak in general to both what's in the charter now, and you can also read what the Charter Revision Committee's recommendations are to date.
All right, final thing was a while ago I was looking, the state was very interested in taking over zoning responsibilities from the cities to the state. I don't know if that is still going on.
That is still going on. The bills are rapidly advancing, and there's a number of bills that are likely to come forward for a vote before the end of this session in May and June. And so, yes, most of what you saw last year and then some is at the state level. And it's unfortunate, and it really pains me to say this, but ENNA really has had no time to even be able to collaborate with folks who are looking into that and opposing it. If you are interested, and I will give you both groups' sides of the equation, the lobbying group, which is an interesting group in itself, that are proponents of greater density and creating massive amounts of housing units in our cities, particularly around our train stations, and taking away one family zoning altogether, is called Desegregate Connecticut. And then the group who is opposed to that and lobbying for keeping zoning control within the communities and not relinquishing control of zoning sizes or around train stations is CT 169 Strong. And they're either .com or .org, I forget. But if you Google CT 169 Strong, you will be able to see that group. You'll be able to see all the bills that are in legislation right now. You'll be able to see their statements on it. You'll be able to look at providing public comment, petitions, and things. And same thing with Desegregate Connecticut.
All right. All right. Well, that's it. I'll take down my hand.
Thanks, Judy. Okay. So on a much lighter topic, people saw this in the paper and we started getting inundated with emails. I was getting emails personally and emails through ENNA as well. But 25 Van Zant Street, which is one of the former hat factories and a major building here in East Norwalk, has gone through a number of iterations of possible uses over the years, with permit applications going from adult daycare center use to the most recent one that was controversial and then ultimately got passed, which was to have workforce training and the trades schools be able to operate out of that facility. And when the owners of the property came back and made some adjustments to comments that came from ENNA and from the Planning and Zoning Commission, ultimately that parcel was approved to be able to have trade schools and workforce training facilities there. And for the most part, all of us agreed that that was a worthwhile use, and it is very much needed in the state of Connecticut. Not everyone is going off to college, and the trades are very important, and workforce in all industries. But then out of nowhere, as the cannabis stuff started winding its way through Hartford, and then ultimately approved for different uses, and the city of Norwalk then came up with our regulations and where specific cannabis operations could and couldn't operate. Suddenly you saw this article that came up all over the place about the owners of 25 Van Zant now saying that they've been planning all along for this paradigm shift in cannabis for cultivators and growers and transporters and delivery and cannabis food and beverage. I don't really understand that, except I may have known a brownie or two in my life. I have no idea if that's what they mean, but some sort of food and beverage operation. And entirely what they're doing is when you go to I'll send the link out to the site. I think it was in my last email, but they're actively pursuing tenants for all of these uses in that building. And so two things that are important to know, the bulk of the potential cannabis uses that they are promoting to try to find tenants for, it's not even allowed in this zone. So we've brought that to the attention of both the mayor and Steve Kleppen over at Planning and Zoning. And the other thing is that when the cannabis regulations were going through for zoning, I strongly objected on behalf of the community to have anything related to what Steve Kleppen was calling transporters. Because when you think about that, you're talking about, potential trucks of either raw materials in or, finished goods going out, and then delivery vehicles and stuff, and it would just create havoc over here. But again, rather than justify why that should be in there, or the justification was as we've heard before from Mr. Kleppen, well, it's not really likely to happen because there's no real parcels that would apply to. Well, so now we see that does have the potential to happen. So I just wanted people to be aware of this. But I did hear back from the mayor and Steve Kleppen today that, in fact, 25 Van Zant, despite the fact that they're advertising for tenants and to inviting people to come take tours and apply for space, that's not even a legal use. That as of today, the owners of 25 Van Zant have not actually filed any permit applications to allow this use in their building. So I just want to say that, for now, to talk about rooftop cannabis space to grow and then maybe to have samplings, or I just don't know really what they have in mind. It's all rather bizarre. And again, I think the link was in Saturday's email. If it wasn't, I'll put it in this week's email, but you can also just Google it and you can see the whole PR campaign for this. If people are either supportive of this, maybe you've been waiting a long time for this in East Norwalk, you can watch for when a permit application comes through, or if you have concerns about this for any impact that you think any of these operations might have on the community, then again, if an actual permit does materialize, we'll see that and we will get that out to the community. All right, so we'll keep folks posted on that. So the next things that are coming up for whoever's still on, our regular meeting is May 15th, and there's sure to be a number of important items on that. Basically, a whole bunch of the stuff that we spoke about tonight, and then I will keep you posted on the exact time for that May 2nd District C, which is our political voting district over here. The May 2nd presentation of this zoning map will be at City Hall, and I'll get that information out. And I will let you know, hopefully within a day or two, we'll hear back from Mr. Kleppen as to whether or not he can commit to then making a presentation specifically to ENNA at our May 15th meeting. And if that's the case, I suspect we'll be devoting our entire hour and a half to 2 hours just to this. Because it's that important, and we want to make sure that while we have Mr. Kleppen or Mr. Baker with us, that they can answer as many questions as possible and address concerns as well. All right, good to see everybody. I see a whole bunch of names here. Thank you, everybody, for coming on. And again, the volunteers for the shredding event, I'll send out a separate email. If there's anybody still on the call who wants to pop over and give us a hand, that would be fun. Meet some of your neighbors. And that's on Saturday from 9 to 12. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you staying on. Thank you.